Hello and welcome to another My Life in Objects video. So I fancy doing another music hardware video. This one's about a book called Rock Hardware, which I bought in the 80s. I think this is from 1981, at least that's what I think it says in the inside of this book early on, in terms of the publication date. It's another book, funnily enough, by Tony Bacon, who was the author of the Ultimate Guitar book. So a very nice book, £10.90. I don't know if you can see that in the bottom corner there. £10.95 at the time I bought this. And yeah, definitely scratched an itch I had about a fascination with music hardware generally, or as it's called here, Rock Hardware. Yeah, copyright 1981. And you can see here it goes through a number of different categories, so acoustic, electric bass guitar, drums, percussion, keyboards, synthesizers, effects units, woodwind, brass and strings, amplification, the PA system, playing live and recording. There's also a bit of a discography at the end. So lots of nice photos here if you're a very eclectic music fan like I am. I just love these sorts of things. You know, you've got The Who, you've got, is that Sly and the Family Stone there? Yep, Sly and the Family Stone, Rolling Stones, someone who played with Miles Davis. So there's these wonderful photos of well-known musicians of the day. There's Susie Quattro, and lots of great quotes, and then lovely full spread images like this. So over here we've got Andy Powell, I think of. Yeah, it's always interesting. So there's Andy Powell with his Flying V. I'm trying to think who the first person I saw with a Flying V. Actually, it might have been Andy Powell. I'm trying to think it was him or Schenker. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, these are all his guitar. You can see he's got a couple of Telecasters there flanked by his Flying Vs. Nice little pile there of Elliot Easton from the Cars, his guitars. There's a great picture there of Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, abusing his keyboard, hurling it around the stage. So there's lots of wonderful stories in here as well, and great quotes you can see there. So yeah, it starts off with this just general introduction here, and then moves through different types of instruments. So we start off with the acoustic guitar. This was nice as well because at the time I didn't know much about the sort of basic structure of instruments, and this taught me an awful lot about, you know, the things like electroacoustics, like the Ovation guitar and various other things as well. There were these nice, almost what do you call them? Thinking when I used to do technical drawing, but you know, like technical images of things. We'll see a few more here. They're like in that sort of blueprint look to them. That's the word I'm trying to think of. And so we move on to the electric guitar. And the other thing you'll notice with this book, obviously, because of the different things it covers, there's going to be a lot of the usual suspects in it. So the usual stuff you expect to see. But it was nice to see these sort of pictures of guitar makers and some nice sort of blueprint stuff. I'm assuming that's like a patent submission maybe, you know, for various guitars that became famous around the sort of birth of the electric guitar. There's a bit of timeline stuff going on, some interesting stuff about the configurations of various, you know, Les Pauls. You know, particularly things like this before this became referred to purely, I think, as the SG. I think he asked for, at some point, I'm pretty sure he asked to have his name removed from that. So it went from being, I think, the Les Paul SG to just the SG, if my memory serves me correctly. Probably need to read this book again, I suspect. The other thing I was fascinated with was by pickup shapes and combinations. So it had nice stuff like this that had basic shapes, like the top one there's the I think the so-called Charlie Christian pickup, which was on the ES 150. Yeah, so it's a great book for sort of familiarising yourself, as is implied in the title, with rock hardware generally. So lots of interesting shapes, like the Breadwinner, BC Rich, that sort of stuff. So again, it was good for me because it has sort of attached a name to guitars that I'd seen. So things like the SG 2000s, I'd seen some of my favourite players both before and after this book came out. So John McGeoch played a Yamaha SG, as did the guy from Big Country, whose name has just escaped me, Stuart Adamson, also from the Skids. So lots of interesting stuff if you're into this. I don't know how easy it is to get this book, unfortunately. If I discover some links to the publisher that mention this book, I'll, as always, include them in the description. So more pickup configurations and hardware stuff. Moving on to the electric bass guitar. So some great photos of Chic and Bruce Foxton. And there's the Rickenbacker. I don't know if there's any shots of Lemmy in here. I don't think so. Moving on to drums. All of that cymbals there and the composition of snare drum. So it really does give you a nice whistle top store, but you get these lovely shots of like manufacturing processes as well. And we get on to keyboards. So this was really cool because we've got exploded views of these grand pianos. A little bit of historical stuff as well. And then it gets onto some interesting stuff. So a lot of these things that are, I suppose you could say, the forerunners of synths. So stuff like the Hammond organ. So there's a little bit of an explanation here about the functioning of so-called electronic organs, particularly things like the Hammond and the Mellotron Novatron as well, which fascinated me. That I learnt a lot about the tape setup for this, how those tapes actually worked. So that's pretty cool. And then it sort of talks about electronic pianos in a really interesting way in terms of how they create the sound. And again, that's always something that's fascinated me in the history of keyboards. There used to be this fantastic keyboard museum which didn't deal with electronic keyboards, but it dealt with all the different types of strung keyboards, but also covered keyboards that strike metal plates as well. And that was over. Sadly it's no longer open. I think the owner of it, who was, when I went over there, was already fairly elderly, and was at some point, I think, a concert pianist who sadly had succumbed to arthritis, and eventually he passed away, and the collection was sold. Because I know that because a few years ago, when I was at the Music Museum in Oxford visiting the UK, I had a chat with the curator there, and we were talking about that old collection, I was wondering what had happened to it, and he sort of was talking to me about it. So yeah, that's I found it. But that was, I think, trying to think, that was in Kent, I think. I can't remember the little village that it was close to, but it was fascinating to see all these like old stringed instruments, and also instruments that hit a bar or other things to get a sound. There's no electronic stuff there, but it was cool to see stringed instruments, stringed keyboard instruments. And then we get on to synthesizers, another area that really fascinates me. So we got early synthesizers. A little bit about the waves, the type of waves as well. Sawtooth, sine wave, square wave, that sort of thing. And other things connected with attack, delay, release and sustain, ADRS, I think that's right, or ADSR. Oh, Taurus bass pedals. I was big fan of Rush, so yeah, I used to love hearing about things like Taurus bass pedals. Then it moves on to effects units, and I had, at the time, around this time, I had a interesting guitar book, which I don't think I've shown, maybe. No, I think I have actually shown it on an early video series prior to My Life in Objects, which covers the major effects manufacturers. I've bought books since then which are much more in depth, but I do love looking at these ones because it's just an interesting selection of pedals that they've chosen to pick. So you've got things like the Wem Copycat. I actually had one of those. Sadly, I wish I'd kept hold of it, because probably now I'd have the knowledge to maybe go inside and repair it. But I did have one of those second hand. And then we've got the MXR pedals. And these different sort of the shapes of the like the Electro-Harmonic, the Electric Mistress, the MXR Flanger. So it was interesting because back then a lot of pedals had their own unique shape, so you could almost like just spot them from the shape, whereas now a lot of pedals, they from manufacturers, they sort of look the same, although some of them have a very nice colour schemes and artwork on them. There's a little bit about the EKO rhythm box as well. It does talk a couple of places you probably noticed it mentions drum machines. And this is the other thing that I was fascinated by, these modular pedals as well. And it had a nice picture of a custom made pedal board. So I remember the name Pete Cornish being banded around, and he was a famous custom pedal manufacturer of the day. And then a load of other instruments that are used actually in rock form, in rock lineups, things like saxophones. A little bit about harmonicas as well. Stuff about amplifications for violins. And then it gets on to amplification. Oh, there we go. I forgot about that. It's classic lineup Motorhead, Filthy Phil with the sort of shark drum artwork, and there's Lemmy and Fast Eddie. Wow. And then Marshall Stack, Sasha and Marsha. I wonder if that might be the pre-Murder One amp days. So yeah. And it's funny, of course, when they talk about recent developments in here, because this book came out in 81, so yeah. Wow, what's that now? Well over 40 years old, this book. And then we got stuff about the PAs as well, just history of that. It's a whole fascinating area in and of itself. And these like really early mixing desks, that sort of stuff. Microphones. I can't remember if it was in here where I learned a little bit about the different types of microphones as well, or maybe that was another book. Oh yeah, this stuff, sort of different horns. Yeah, these nice, again, like cut throughs of stuff. I don't know if this was pre-DK, I think it might have been. So at the time, yeah, this book just blew my mind. And then it had an interesting thing generally about just playing live, talking about the different venues, and, you know, just little bits about the challenges of touring and playing at different size venues, which I thought was a very interesting inclusion. And there's a bit of classic Queen there. And I think around this time, that's when I became aware of the fact that bands used to actually hire space to literally rehearse for a tour as well, and they'd like set up these spaces in the configuration of the tour to rehearse, which I thought was pretty cool. And then a section about recording as well, which again talks a little bit about various tape machines. I think this was definitely the compact recording era, you know, where you had those little 4-track recorders which would run off a regular cassette tape that ran at double speed. I actually had one of those, which I bequeathed to a friend. It was a sort of loan that turned into just a gift, really. On it, one of the channels had stopped working, and we used it for a while for something. I'm trying to remember what, and then it became a really handy little 3-channel mixing desk for him. So I just let him have it because it had sort of grown its use. Well, basically because one of the channels had failed, so I couldn't really use it as a recording device anymore. But I can't remember which one it was. I think Tascam made one, but it might have been one of the other manufacturers that were doing the same thing. Because of course now it's nice because all those compact recorders, like the little Boss ones, are all just run off of SD chips and stuff like that. So yeah, everything's much more compact. And then we get a pretty cool and very succinct discography as well. So if you're curious of listening to certain instruments or category of instrument on record, then this is quite nice. Bit confused about the relevance here of this one. I thought it would be more likely to be live stuff, but not sure. See, there's some reference in the original book. And then we've got some manufacturer stuff as well. I wonder how many of these are still going. And then a rather convenient glossary. And then see an index, some bibliography and credits there. So yeah, lovely book. Is that all the contributors? Yeah, that's the contributors. So you can see it's it's managed to retain its outer dust jacket anyway. Yeah, so definitely a book I should take down back off the shelf again and have a nice read over Christmas. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I'll catch you in a future video.